Hi there, it's Ben Halsall, and here we're going to have a look at how we use the crop tool in Final Cut Pro 10. Now, there's a few different types of crop tool in Final Cut Pro and a few different ways of cropping your clips with different tools as well. So we're going to run through all of those in this in-depth tutorial. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is the basic crop tool. So we've got a series of a few clips on the timeline here, and we're just going to run through how we can use the basic crop tool first of all. So let's just open up one more window here so that we can see what happens when we're cropping our clip. So if we go to Window, Show Inspector, you may already have it opened up. This shows us the crop options for Final Cut Pro 10, okay? However, the quickest and most intuitive way to work with the crop tool is to look at the viewer in the middle here, and just down to the bottom left, you'll see the crop tool, or the transform or distort tools listed there. So wherever you see this little arrow here, there's a couple of extra tools listed. So we're going to grab the crop tool, or grab the crop tool from the menu here, and you'll see it will turn this blue, and we'll get four handles that pop up at the edge of the image that we're working on here. So we have a few different options as well that pop up over the top of our video. So we can see trim, crop, and Ken Burns. So trim and crop are static crops by default, and the Ken Burns crop is an animated crop where you're transitioning from one cropped version of your video or still image to another. Okay, so either zooming in or zooming out or panning across an image. So if we have a look at what else has popped up here as well, we've got this little button at the top left that we'll come to later, which allows us to keyframe our crop so we can actually animate transitions with our crop. Okay, so if we just grab one of these corners with trim selected, you can see we begin to crop our clip. Okay, so basically we're now cropping the clip within the frame of the video. So what we see here, this black area of video, will be visible when we actually click done up here. We'll be left with this cropped version of the video, and then this black area around the outside would export as well. Okay, so this is great if you want to create a split screen. So if I drag this clip up on the timeline and turn it into a connected clip, okay, so it's connected to this other clip, you can see that I've got a clip within a clip here now, and I can quite quickly select a couple of clips here and crop them, okay, so that I end up with this split screen style look. Okay, so if we click done here now, so to come back and get these full clips back so we can have a look at the other different types of crop, I'm going to use Command and Z once and twice to get this first clip back. I'm going to drop this clip back down to the timeline. Okay, and to undo the settings here, I'm just going to come up to the inspector. Okay, and if you look in the crop options here, for every single effect or tool that you work with in the inspector, you have this little hooked reset arrow, which allows us to click it and it resets it. So it sets all those trim options back to 0. So if I just undo that, you'll see that the crop options that we set here are actually highlighted here in the inspector as well. So if we want to crop more accurately, kind of by pixel, then we can drag these and it will actually crop live in the viewer here. Okay, so we can use the crop tool to crop a clip, or we can use the tools up here, the sliders, to actually crop a clip. Okay, so let's undo this. So that's the first cropping option, the trim option that we have here. And then we have the crop option. And the crop option, if you click it here, is basically reframing the image. So if I look up here, my option, my type of crop has changed to crop. Okay, and I've still got four handles at the end, but without the dotted line at the edge. So if I drag this in now from the bottom right and from the top left, rather than cropping it and leaving that black area around the clip, when I click done here, I'm actually cropping that clip and effectively zooming in to my clip here. Okay, so that's the second way that you can crop. And this is where animation within cropping comes in handy. So if we come to the start of our clip here, I'm going to turn the crop back on. Okay, you can see here I can turn on my animation keyframing. Okay, so I can click here once and it's turned on keyframing. You can see up here in the inspector for the left, the right, the top and the bottom. Okay, and then if I come ahead in time, okay, I can now drag out this and reframe it. Okay, yeah, and you can see I can click inside here as well to reframe. Okay, so click done there, and now I have an animation from this zoomed in version of the video, and it's now gradually zooming out. Okay, it's a little jumpy there because it's not rendered yet. We can do that same effect with Ken Burns. Okay, so basically the Ken Burns effect is this transition from one framed version of the image to another. So if I reset this cropped version of the image, come back up to crop and select Ken Burns, then you can see we have a start point and an end point here. Okay, and essentially what's happening here is we're starting with this wider shot of that clip, and then we can click in the middle. So you can see now my center red end spot is highlighted, and I can reframe that shot. So we're getting this slight zoom into the image. Okay, so if you want to create a slideshow, this is a great way of doing that on your still images, or it can create a kind of subtle zoom. Now, one thing to be said about cropping your videos, about zooming into them, is that if you zoom in more than about 15 to 20%, then you're going to really begin to see a loss in quality. Okay, and that depends on a lot of things: the camera you're using, the output format that you're using. So for instance, if you're going from HD or 4K down to a standard definition DVD, then you can pretty much zoom in at will. But if you're zooming in on footage that's going to be exported out at HD, then you're going to need to kind of think about the quality. And what you see is what you get. What you will want to do is come up to the view options up here and the percentage here, and just view things at 100%. Okay, and this is where you can really see the quality of the edge of your image and the kind of feel of your image. You can see the noise. So it's the full quality image that we're viewing there at 100%. And you can just have a quick scan around and see that this looks a lot blurrier. This is a camera phone video footage, so it's pretty blurry anyway, but you can see that as we zoom in to here, we start to lose a little more quality than we had in the start. Okay, so it's something to be aware of when you're working with your footage, is how much you're zooming in. Okay, let's go back to fit here. So we can work with crop in a couple of nice different ways. So if I grab this piece of footage, I'm just going to turn off Ken Burns there. Okay, and I'm going to crop this. I'm going to use the trim options up here. I'm going to crop this from the right. Okay, you can see it's going to crop it nicely from the right there. So this type of layout or setup is great for adding titles or credits on the right hand side there. So if I set that up, grab my type tools, come to my credits, then my standard credits, if I drop them on top here, you'll see with a little bit of repositioning here, if I come to my transform options here in the viewer, with a little bit of repositioning, working with that crop and with the font size and getting things to fit in that space, we've got a nice space where we can place some scrolling titles, credits for our video, and that type of thing. Okay, so working with the crop can give you space to do things like that while still keeping the video in shot, or some kind of outtakes from your project. Okay, we could take that a step further. So if we grab this clip, I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key and pull this up. Okay, so now with this bottommost clip, I'm just going to turn so I've got two clips here with crop on. You can see when they're both highlighted, they both have crop on. If I reset the bottom clip, so I've highlighted that, you can see the yellow outline there. And now if I go down to my opacity and just drop that down somewhere between 4 to 15%, you can see now I've got this dropped back version of the video here, which you can see works quite nicely with that type across on the right hand side. Okay, we can take this another step further, and if I just highlight these three clips, I'm going to hold down the Alt key again and just drag these across the right. It's going to duplicate all three of those selected clips at the same time, and instead of dropping back this clip in the background, I'm going to turn the opacity here back up to 100%. Okay, I'm going to come to my effects and come to my color effects and colorize. Okay, and you can see now with that effect turned on, and we can remap different colors to that right hand side. So we're remapping the black to these darker kind of greens or reds, and then remapping the white, we can bring that right down as well and remap the white to this kind of darker color, and we can adjust the intensity as well there to kind of tweak that color on the right hand side. Okay, so we can create some nice effects here for placing titles over the top of and working with those titles with effects on the right hand side. So that's using the colorize effect and then adjusting the intensity to decide how much intensity we want there. So if you can see, if we get some colors that are nice and close to each other, we get this kind of duotone look to that background there, but it still matches perfectly with the video as we see that play through. Okay, so we can see the clouds moving there and everything, and it's working perfectly across there on the right hand side. Okay, so if we have a lot of different clips that we want to add the same effects to, there's some great ways in Final Cut Pro that we can do this. So with cropping, with effects that we've added, such as the colorize effect, we can copy and paste those effects in Final Cut Pro. So I'm going to grab this last clip here, and if I duplicate this up, okay, I'm going to copy the crop from this effect, this clip, to this clip on the right hand side here. So I'm going to use edit and copy. Okay, come to this next clip and then use edit and paste attributes, or shift command V. Okay, command and C to copy, shift command and V to paste attributes. Okay, and you can see here that when we come in here, we have crop as one of those options. So now I hit paste attributes and paste that. We have the clip below, so if I highlight this clip and just tap V, you'll see that crop has copied to this clip above. So V disables a clip. And then if I grab this next clip, the bottom clip there, copy that. So this is the one with the color effect, and then go to edit and paste attributes, or shift command and V. And I'm going to paste my colorize effect here in the paste attributes. I can paste that now, and you can see we end up with that same effect on the right hand side. So we get this nice transition from one to the next. So if we have scrolling titles that are going to come right across both these clips, then we can copy and paste those attributes, and we can select multiple clips as well. So if we have 10 clips, 50 clips, we can select them all and paste the same attributes to those clips. Okay, so you see we get that nice transition from one clip to the next, but the title's still flowing nicely in there as well. We can also use this to do a kind of frame in frame as well. So for instance, if we grab this clip here and create a crop on it, but I'm going to create a crop on the layer above. So I'm going to pull this up. So I've got two clips there. I'm going to add to the layer behind this black and white effect, which is going to desaturate it. And then we can grab the crop tool, and we're using the trim crop tool. So now we can pull this from the bottom right and the top left, and we get this nice frame in frame shot with the middle of that frame colorized, and then the outside of that frame in black and white. Okay, so highlighting the subject there of this particular clip. Okay, and you can see the camera's moving a little bit there, so we could, if we wanted to, come in there, turn our crop back on, add our keyframing, and then just as our subject moves around a little bit, we can reframe that crop so that it tracks a little bit with the movement of the camera. Okay, this is not true motion tracking, but if you only have a few frames or a second to deal with, then you can manage that animation quite well, or a nice pan will work well as well, so you've got smoother motion with the animation. So that's another example. If we come to something more advanced here, then you can see here we have a kind of more advanced shape. So if we wanted to crop out, say, the middle of this arch that we have here, then these standard crop tools won't really begin to work well with something like this. So there's some more advanced crop tools in the effects panel that we have here. So if we bring up the effects panel, okay, and we're going to come to masks down here, and we have a few different cropping tools that we can use. So we have a shape mask, which will mask things to a shape, cropping away parts of the edge of that. this vignette, which you can see, and then things like this graduated mask as well. Okay, if we grab the draw mask and drag this onto our clip, we just need to come out of the original cropping tool here. So with the draw mask turned on, and you can see we get this message to click to add a control point. So here we can click, just like you do in Adobe Illustrator or something like that, around the edge here. Okay, and I'm just clicking from dot to dot, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here to 25% so I can see the edge here, and we can click around this shape here. Okay, and that's going to crop a more customized shape. I'm just going to come back by pressing Command Z a few times and come back to the beginning, because we were clicking dot to dot there, but we can also click and draw a more accurate shape. So if I click and hold, and this is always tricky when you first have a go at it, and we can draw these Bezier masks out. So we can do some quite advanced compositing within Final Cut Pro 10. Okay, and one nice thing about this mask, which we don't have with the other mask, is that we have this feathering as well. So you can see here, if I turn the feathering right up, we're feathering it either outwards or inwards. Okay, so if I feather it inwards here a little bit, okay, I'm going to duplicate this layer. Let's get it to snap into position here. If your clips aren't snapping, just make sure you've got snapping turned here on the right hand side. Okay, and once you've created your mask there, if we now remove it, so I'm clicking on this bottom clip, I'm going to remove this draw mask. So to delete the draw mask, just highlight it in the inspector and press backspace, and that will remove it. And now I'm going to come back to my color effects, or actually my looks here. I'm going to go for 50s TV and drop that on the reverse clip here, and you can see now we've got this nice feather between the color and this grayed out part of the image above. Now the camera's moving around a little bit here, so we'd probably need to work on some animation, but you can see we've got this nice transition, this feather between the foreground and the background clip, and we can switch that so that it blends into that arch rather than the other way around, which I think will work quite nicely. So here you can see we've got this nice grayscale arch, and then a saturated sky and grass in the background. Okay, let's just zoom back to fit. Okay, so you can see this effect can work quite nicely in particular situations, particularly if you're working with a tripod shot. Moving shots are a bit more difficult to composite, but these are some of the motion tools that are now beginning to be incorporated within Final Cut Pro 10. If you want to do more advanced compositing with many layers, then motion is definitely a piece of software worth looking at. Okay, we're just going to have a look at one last thing here, and that is how to create a slideshow. So I'm just going to come to my Finder here. I've got a few images here that I'm going to drag straight onto my timeline. So I'm going to highlight these images and drag them down to my timeline. Okay, so these clips at the moment, I think they're a bit short. Okay, so I want to lengthen the duration of them. So I'm just going to zoom in here a tiny bit. So I can highlight one clip and hold down Control and tap D, and that will let me lengthen the duration of one clip, so I can change it from 1 second to 3 seconds. Okay, or I can highlight a number of clips here and do Control and D and type in 3 full stop, and it will let me lengthen the duration of all those clips. Okay, so here now I'm just going to highlight the first clip, and we're going to add a crop, and we're going to add a Ken Burns crop. Okay, so we're going to go from this frame of the whole chicken coop and kind of zoom in on it here. Okay, so you can see when I'm clicking between the start and the end, it's framing the different shots here. So whatever is that lighter color is what you're actually moving around. Okay, so we'll click done there. So here we're zooming in on that clip, and if we copy that, so go to edit and copy. Okay, I can now highlight all of these other clips and go to edit and paste attributes. Okay, and I'm going to paste the crop to all of those 4 clips. It could be more clips, and you can see now each of those has got the Ken Burns effect on them. Okay, so I'm just going to jump in here because that's working okay, but I want to have a bit of variation. So I can click on each clip, highlight the crop here, and I can use this little button up at the top left just to change it from a zoom in to a zoom out. So I'm going to have these alternating, so we'll have this one zooming out and then this third one zooming out as well. Okay, and you can see the Ken Burns option here has stayed active when I've switched from one clip to the next, so I can flip that as well, and I can perhaps change the framing of it a little bit. So by copying and pasting that Ken Burns effect onto all the clips, we can now jump between them and edit the kind of different framings of all those clips within this slideshow. Okay, so if I click done there, we've now got... Okay, so now let's play that back. So we've got this slideshow with one clip to the next, and we can just add a cross-dissolve transition there to those clips, and that will allow us to then have a nice little transition between those clips. So I'm just going to select these three clips in the middle here, and I'm going to go to Edit, Apply Cross Dissolve. So Command and T is set as the default transition, so you can either go to Edit, Add Cross Dissolve, or use the Command and T shortcut, and that will add a cross dissolve between these three clips. Okay, so now if we play this back, we'll get a nice cross dissolve between those three clips. Okay, so that's an in-depth overview of cropping. So we've had a look at how we can use the trim crop option, how we can use the crop option, which reframes the clip, how we can use the Ken Burns option in a couple of different scenarios for slideshows, or to zoom into a video on your timeline. And we've also had a look at some more advanced cropping for creating composites using the Draw Mask tool, which is a really great tool. I love it. And I hope you found that useful. I look forward to more of your questions, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.